Welcome back to Movies Outpost. Today we'll be diving into a mystery action thriller film titled 13. Enjoy the recap. Our story begins inside a place where big sums of cash get traded. Under an odd-looking light bulb, we find Vincent with a gun aimed at another man, who in turn points his weapon back at him. Just 4 days ago, in the heart of Ohio, Vince, his mom, and his sisters decided to sell their family home to cover his dad's mounting medical bills. His father has been in the hospital for some time after a mishap. Every day, Vince would visit his dad before heading to his job as an electrician. His work varied, dealing with all sorts of clients. On this particular day, he was working for Mr. Harrison, who had recently received an enigmatic letter. Unknown to him, a police officer was discreetly taking pictures from across the street. When Vince overhears Mr. Harrison discussing the letter with his partner, he catches something about a large sum of money coming their way. Later that day, Vince returns home to celebrate his little sister's birthday. He can't help but chuckle at her wish for a pet lamb. Meanwhile, miles away, a man named Jasper Baggs is in a hushed meeting with some questionable individuals. They lend him a whopping $2 million, expecting a return of $3 million within a mere 3 days. The next day brings more bad news for Vince. On a visit to his dad at the hospital, the doctor announces another operation is required, which will inevitably push their debt higher. Back at Mr. Harrison's place, Vince overhears him chatting with a friend about a special job that could reel in a lot of money in just 1 day. Mr. Harrison had done something similar before, relying on sheer luck to succeed. Yet the memories of that time continue to haunt him. After his friend departs, Mr. Harrison retreats to his room seeking some leisure time but unexpectedly succumbs to an overdose. Once the police finish their necessary questioning, they permit Vince to leave. However, just before his departure, he swipes the mysterious envelope from Mr. Harrison's desk. Inside, he finds a train ticket to New York and a receipt for a parcel pickup from the CPS. At the post office, Vince presents his ID to the clerk as requested and receives a package. Inside, there's a mobile phone, $500, a key, and a letter adorned with a spider logo. The letter instructs him to use the money for a hotel in New York and to only use the provided phone. He must leave his personal phone behind. Further instructions would come later. When Mr. Harrison's partner informs the police about the missing envelope, they check the post office records. They find Vince's name listed as the one who collected Harrison's package. This information reaches Detective Mullen, who's been investigating these mysterious envelopes. He orders his team to discreetly shadow Vince. The next day, Vince dresses in his finest suit and boards the train to New York, oblivious to the cop tailing him. In New York, he follows the instructions and checks into the specified hotel. Later that night, his new phone rings. Assuming the identity of Mr. Harrison, Vince accepts the new instructions. The following day, he meticulously follows them. He heads to the Postnet store near Grand Central, uses the key to open a designated P.O. box, and discovers a new envelope. Inside, there's another train ticket, a small piece of cork with the number 13 on it, and even more instructions. His ticket leads to Macomb, but the instructions tell him to get off 1 stop earlier. Later on the train, when an inspector asks for his ticket and sees his destination, the information is relayed to the police. But since Vince alights earlier than expected, he gains a small lead on the officers trailing him. Next, Vince hails a taxi to the town's outskirts. Once the taxi departs, another car pulls up, driven by a man named Jack. They confirm their shared mission with matching cork pieces marked with the number 13. After Vince shows his piece, Jack takes the phone and drives off just as the police arrive, led there by the taxi driver. But they're too late, there are no clues left for them to follow. Moments later, Jack brings Vince to a hidden shack nestled in the heart of the forest. There, 2 other men provide him with plain clothes to wear. They thoroughly inspect his old attire, ensuring he hasn't concealed anything. They even cut off his shoe heels to be certain. Next, Vince is driven to a grand mansion brimming with wealthy individuals. Here, Vince meets the man he'll be representing, Joe. It's immediately apparent to Joe that Vince isn't Harrison. After Vince explains Harrison's demise and how he took his place, Joe reluctantly agrees to let him participate to avoid arousing suspicion among the other patrons. Meanwhile, heavy betting is taking place downstairs, involving large sums of money. Jasper arrives, placing a bet on his representative, number 6, while Joe stakes his bet on Vince, who has been assigned the number 13. The suspenseful event that everyone is betting on is revealed to be Russian roulette. Each participant, including Vince, is given a gun and is told to stand in a circle with their respective number printed on black t-shirts. Every man receives a single bullet. Once their barrels are loaded and spun, they aim their gun at the person in front of them, while someone else targets them from behind. When the light bulb bearing the spider logo illuminates, it's the signal to fire. Any participant who survives proceeds to the next round. Overwhelmed by the situation, Vince is visibly anxious and requires Jack's assistance to load his weapon. When the bulb finally glows, some men fall, yet the round isn't complete. Vince has yet to fire his weapon. Security rushes over, threatening to shoot Vince if he doesn't comply with the game rules. Gathering his courage, Vince pulls the trigger. To his relief, the man he's aiming at survives. Once the first round concludes, Joe takes Vince aside for a stern pep talk. He also starts accepting bets from the patrons whose representatives didn't survive the round. Jack, meanwhile, offers Vince some morphine for his nerves, which Vince declines. At the same time, Patrick Jefferson, participant number 17, pleads with his patron Jimmy. He promises to repay him 50-fold if he can arrange his escape. Baffled by why a wealthy man like Jefferson would participate in such a deadly game, Jimmy listens as Jefferson recounts his story. He'd been imprisoned until he was abruptly dressed up and locked in a box shipped to this mansion. Despite spending 2 agonizing days in the box, Jefferson's story doesn't move Jimmy, who insists he can't assist. Meanwhile, Jasper places additional bets on his own participant, who turns out to be his brother, Ronald Lynn Baggs. Ronald had recently been in a mental institution until Jasper pulled him out to serve as his player. The second round commences, this time with 2 bullets loaded into each gun. Half the circle falls, but Vince survives, more through good fortune than anything else. His would-be shooter doesn't even get the chance to fire. There's a moment of shock when number 16 suddenly rises, but upon inspection, the doctor declares him unfit to continue. Security ensures he won't stand up again. Participant number 11, Hans, suffers a mental breakdown. His patron Schlondorf attempts to soothe him with an encouraging speech, but it doesn't seem to do much good. Jefferson, meanwhile, reveals more of his past to Jimmy. He was imprisoned for a truck robbery, but managed to hide the stolen money somewhere safe before he was captured. If he doesn't survive the competition, Jefferson wants Jimmy to use a sketched map, which he'll keep in his pocket, to locate the hidden loot. The agreement is that Jimmy can keep half the money if he sends the other half to Jefferson's son, who's also incarcerated. Jimmy agrees to these terms. While taking more bets, Jasper is consumed by his own memories. When he had taken his brother Ronald out of the mental institution, Ronald had stopped taking his meds, insisting he felt better without them. Now, however, Ronald seems anything but well. When Jasper pulls a number revealing Ronald will be aiming at participant 13, Ronald lashes out at Vince with an ashtray, creating a ruckus that Jasper has to quell. Round 3 begins, and the pressure is palpable. Hans is given morphine to steady his nerves for the game, and number 3 needs to sit in a chair just to participate. Ronald goads Vince into a confrontation, even slapping him, but the host quickly intervenes. This round sees each player load their gun with 3 bullets. The gunfire leaves only 5 competitors standing: Vince, Jefferson, Ronald, number 3, and number 9. This means the competition can advance to its final stage, the duel. 5 wrapped balls are placed on a table, 2 black and 3 white. The patrons of the remaining 5 players each select a ball. The patrons who draw the black ones are destined for the final duel, while the others are released. Jasper and Joe draw the black ones, meaning the final showdown will be between Vince and Ronald. As the experienced player, Ronald attracts the majority of new bets. However, Joe persuades Schlondorf to wager on Vince, promising a 5-to-1 return on his investment. Jimmy tells Jefferson he can collect his winnings and leave. However, as Jefferson is distracted while changing back into his regular clothes, Jimmy sees an opportunity and launches a surprise attack, intending to take Jefferson's life. Luckily, the situation doesn't escalate further, as security intervenes before Jimmy can do any serious harm, reminding him that survivors are off limits. Jefferson laughs at Jimmy, mocking his gullibility as he pulls out the blank piece of paper from his pocket. After Jimmy and the guard leave, Jefferson shows us his sly maneuver. He still has the real map, which he promptly burns before making his exit. Before the ultimate round commences, Ronald confronts Jasper angrily, demanding his fair share of the winnings this time. He accuses Jasper of using the funds their parents had left for his care to put him in a mental institution. He knows Jasper only freed him to participate in the deadly game, never sharing any of the winnings. The story circles back to its opening scene as the final round starts. Each player is given 3 bullets. Vince and Ronald lock eyes, their guns pointed at each other, but when the triggers are pulled, both men remain standing. A fortunate round. For the next attempt, an extra bullet is loaded into each gun. This time, Ronald falls, leaving Vince as the victor of the deadly competition. Schlondorf exults over his daring bet's payoff, while Jasper mourns his brother's loss. Vince, however, is left grappling with the weight of having killed a man. Vince's winnings amount to $1,850,000. The man handing him his prize commends Vince's luck, pointing out that Ronald had always been victorious in his past duels. Schlondorf and Joe laud Vince on his victory and propose to take him to the train station. Vince feigns acceptance, but when he ascends the stairs to supposedly retrieve his belongings, he weaves his way through the room full of contestants and flees the mansion via a window. Jack notices his disappearance, but Joe remains unperturbed upon hearing the news. Vince arrives at the train station in the morning where he is recognized by the taxi driver who dropped him off the previous day. Spotting trouble, the driver alerts the police to Vince's whereabouts. Vince, however, sees the arriving police cars from a distance and swiftly hides his money bag in a trash can before they apprehend him. He is subsequently taken in for questioning by Detective Mullen. In response to inquiries about the money, Vince plays dumb and improvises a story. He alleges that upon discovery that he was not Harrison, his captors dumped him in the middle of a forest intending to kill him. Still, he managed to escape. As supporting evidence, he presents his heel-less shoes, attributing their condition to his vigorous escape. Vince offers to identify the culprits if they are ever apprehended, but confesses that he cannot guide the detective to the location as he was blindfolded during the ordeal. With no further leads or evidence, Mullen reluctantly releases Vince. After taking another cab to the station, Vince hastily returns to the trash can, only to find his money bag missing. Then he notices the new trash bags piled up at the back of the building. The bins have been recently emptied. Frantically, Vince starts rummaging through the bags and, fortunately, finds his money. Realizing he cannot take any more risks, he decides against traveling with the cash. Instead, he visits a post office and sends the money to his family using registered mail, ensuring its safe delivery. Having secured his prize money, Vince next calls his mother, alerting her about the impending package to ensure someone is home to receive it the next day. With everything sorted, he boards a train to New York. After a night in a hotel, Vince visits a local grocery store the following morning to pick up some snacks. Spotting a lamb plushie that reminds him of his sister, Vince insists on buying it despite the clerk's reluctance, shelling out a whopping $100 for the toy. With his unexpected purchase in tow, he embarks on the final leg of his journey home to Ohio. Vince boards the train, naively oblivious to Jasper's surreptitious pursuit. Finding a seat, Vince is soon joined by Jasper. Despite their history, laced with tension and rivalry, Jasper converses with Vince in a casual manner, trying to maintain an air of nonchalance amidst the strangeness of the situation. However, as the train pulls into its first stop, Jasper's facade crumbles. As Vince rises to depart, Jasper pulls out a gun, shooting Vince in a swift, brutal act. He hastily grabs Vince's bag, its weight made hefty by the bulky lamb plushie Vince had bought for his sister. Misinterpreting the bag's heft as an indication of the presence of Vince's prize money, left alone in his final moments, Vince acts with the remnants of his strength and swallows the post office receipt, clutching onto the hope that his family will eventually receive the money he had won. His thoughts consumed by his loved ones, Vince succumbs to his injuries, dying in the knowledge that he has secured a better future for his family, even as Jasper disappears into the distance, erroneously believing he has stolen Vince's fortune. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.